Hey everyone, John Doyle from OptixEQ, and today's race of the day, the Virginia Derby. It's a grade 3 to be run at Colonial Downs on Saturday, September the 9th. It's race 10. It's an interesting race. I know there's going to be probably a solid favorite in Chad Brown's program trading, but I think there's different kind of ways to go. It's a little bit of a confusing, complex race. Anytime you're dealing with 3-year-olds, who are still at this stage in their career are still developing. So you see a lot of changes in form. So I'm going to really rely on notes to do some form cycle analysis and try to project where horses might be going. But I'm also going to use the plot to assess the pace of the race. And it's a little confusing because you see people that understand optics plot, it's a red plot fit. And that's usually our plots are less predictable when they're red. The contention is kind of average, speed rating's a little high. So you got a little mix of everything in here, but I'm going to try to weave through it. When you look at it, again, we always plot a standard and surface distance plot. The standard is kind of more current form. It includes races that are not today's surface and distance, while the plot to the right, the surface and distance, we only plot races that are relevant to this surface and distance. And I think it's more, in this particular case, I think it's more of a closer indication of the form of the horses. So I'm going to rely on the surface distance plot. That's the one I'm going to be looking at. And if you start off by looking and drawing a line, again, left to right, so horses that are going to be forward early, at least projected to be forward early, are usually left on the plot. Horses that are going to be toward the rear are going to be to the right. So if you look, kind of draw a line right down through the number 8, that's Laurel Valley. That horse looks like the speed in the race. And we'll see that in a little bit. And then you have, horses that are going to be pressing the horses, and that's kind of going to be these horses that would be the 6, 3, 10, 9, 11. And then you kind of got, off the pace horses to 2, 5, and all the rest. So you kind of get a feel for just the way the horses might kind of fall out here and see. And I'm going to evaluate these horses, by pace segment. So let's start with the number 8, because that's the horse that we kind of project to be in front. Let me clear these lines so we can. Let's start with the number 8. This horse is a horse that's basically has tried dirt and just obviously didn't want no part of it. Seemed to really wake up sprinting on the turf. And then this last route was a special weight at Saratoga. Got a B, didn't even get a B+. It was in state bred. So this is a horse that I think is outclassed in this field. Pratt is obviously going to be on the Chad Brown horse. So this is a horse that I'm going to downgrade. Big circle, doesn't really have a second call advantage. So he's an easy elimination for me. So the next horse I want to kind of look at are the 10 and the 11, because they're going to get the most money. Let's start with the 10, Ari Gold. Here's a horse that, to me, it looks like this horse wants to be forward. In fact, when he's not forward, I'm sorry, when he's not in the lead, he doesn't do as well, right, at the first call. So he's had 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 races, 3 on the lead, 1, 3 not on the lead. Don't expect him to be on the lead. If he is on the lead, he's going to be really compromised to get there from that deep post. So I think just based on a pace dynamics, this horse is going to be tough to back. And it gets back to Ortiz, who really hasn't had much success with him anyway. So maybe this horse takes some money, and maybe that's a good way to kind of downgrade this horse. He's 8 to 1 in the morning line. So anyway, that's a horse I don't like from a pace dynamic standpoint. He's kind of fast enough, just a little, but he's below on class, obviously coming out of Laurel race. Third off a layoff, Fletcher, Ortiz, but this is Jose Ortiz. I don't like Ari Gold. Don't like how he might trip out. The 11 is the favorite. This horse has done nothing wrong. B+, B+, B in a grade 1. This horse can stalk. So this horse is an obvious contender. Big square in quadrant 1. He's okay. Now, the only thing is that his win did come on. His big win came on yielding. He ran a big figure, pressed grit. So, who knows? There was another horse who's also in that, we go back to the plot, is in that range, the number 6, who was part of the same race, that Saratoga Derby that he came out of. He was 7-1 in the race, while the Brown favorite was about 3.5 to 1 in that particular race. And maybe this horse just didn't like the yielding race course, and he was against the bias because that day you didn't want to be on the rail, and he was. So you could see he was saved. So he was up on the inside, not the place to be. This horse also has pace, not need the lead kind of horse like the 10. You can see he can kind of come off of it a little bit. So this horse deserves an upgrade just based on alone that maybe he just didn't like yielding course. The other time he ran on softer ground, he finished 4th. The weather's going to be really nice. That Colonial turf course is nice. It's firm. I'm going to upgrade this horse based on his last race, the trouble he had, and maybe he didn't like the going. If he's closer, like obviously he's 5 to 1 versus the 7 to. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think the my guess is this 11 who's 7 to 2 in the morning line is going to be much higher. But look at the odds. I mean, if there's a bigger discrepancy than let's say if the Chad Brown horse is going really low and this horse is around 8 to 6, 8 to 1, I think you have to include this horse just because he really didn't run a bad race until the situation in the Saratoga Derby where he caught yielding ground. So the 6 to me, out of the early pace dynamics, the 6 looks like a horse that we can kind of consider, and obviously the 11. The 9, he's going to be kind of a presser kind of horse, but he's only got the 1 win. It was a B+. It was at Colonial Downs, though, not at Saratoga. So that's kind of a major class issue. And then he had a really good trip on the way to that. So he does square out. But, I mean, he was running against nobody. Look at the OptixEQ range. That race was 58.64. What is this? OptixEQ range just tells you, based on that field, it's not a par number, I think, is what those horses' speed figures were in recent efforts, and kind of tries to come up with a way to calculate what we project the speed figure to be. So it was projected to be real low. That means a lot of lightly raced horses, a lot of maybe weak horses. So the 9 from a class perspective is below. The 3 is the other horse that's going to be maybe a early and presser, and he's a horse that's kind of won 2 races wire to wire, one at Laurel, Indianapolis Horseshoe, both well below class levels here. You can see the OptixEQ range of those horses, and he got loose. It looks like he made a move. He doesn't look like he made him need the lead horse, but he just looks too the class is an issue here. Let me just go and take a look at this Indianapolis race and see if it came back any strong, because the speed figure was actually competitive. So let's look. What I'm doing here is just see if this was a kind of a key race kind of thing. I just kind of look at all the horses that are run back, and you can see. I mean, there's only 1 horse won, and that was a non-2 lifetime. So that was a weak race. So I'm going to kind of bet against that horse. So from the early presser standpoint, I'm kind of looking at the 11 looks okay. But if you want to take a chance against the 11, the 6 looks like your best bet in that early pace. So now I'm going to go to kind of the off the pace horses. I'm going to look at the first we'll look at the 7, because that's the other Brown horse. He's tricky for me. He did nothing wrong early on, all green in his first 3 races as a 2-year-old. Really bumped up and ran a big race as a debut as a 3-year-old. Is there more upside? Maybe. I took a look at this race too and see how it came back. It wasn't the strongest race. This is, if I recall, let me just look at. So, yeah, I mean, at least the horses all came back. None of them have won. They all run kind of C pluses or C's. So, I mean, it is another horse from a class perspective. Maybe there's more upside in this horse because he showed some potential. But maybe he maxed out too in that first race back because he was running. His numbers weren't that fast. So even if you project like 10, 12 points above, his 2-year-old races, he kind of got there already. I don't know how much more upside he has. But maybe, to me, he's kind of a maybe. I wouldn't really be too upset about his plot because a lot of that form came as a 2-year-old, so you can't compare the form. So I would ignore his plot if you like him, if you think he's got still some more upside. I'm iffy on him, I'll be honest with you. The 2 is another horse that kind of plotted well, but he's tricky. He kind of was an early pace horse his whole career, and then he's slow out of the gate in the Colonial race, the stakes race that he ran third in, and then he won a race at a big price at 22-1. That was the Secretariat. Kind of made a move, and then he kind of went on with it after being kind of like shuffled back early. I don't know. I'm a little worried because I don't see this horse as a closer. And if he's going to get back to that pressing style, like if he gets out of the gate better, I think he might be compromised a little bit. So that's my concern with him. You're not going to get the 22-1. I mean, he was really a bomb in that race, in that Secretariat. He ran a 93 the last time he ran 93. He kind of came back and regressed a little bit. So I don't know if he's got another move forward. I think he kind of got the race that he wanted to get in the Secretariat. So I'm going to be a little bit downgrading him because I just don't know really style-wise. I don't see him as a closer. I think he's going to be, either if he's not further back, then if he's going to be forward, he's going to take some pressure, and I'm just concerned about that. The other horse I thought was kind of interesting was the number 1 Freedom Trial. Here's a horse that started off his career, first 2 races. This is a horse that showed some closing ability on turf. He did get flow in his debut and win, but he came right back in a stakes race at Belmont at Aqueduct and won from off the pace. So, this horse is proven from off the pace, his 2-year-old, he kind of projection with those numbers kind of puts him in the range here today. If he had 12 to 15 points from those numbers, or 10 points, kind of puts him in the range. Then they put him on dirt. I guess they thought, well, if he can turf, maybe if he can dirt, obviously we want to point him to dirt races. And that's always a tough race, the Grade 2 Kentucky Jockeys Club for 2-year-olds late in the season. And even though he finished 8, he was only beaten 3.5 lengths in that race. So they said, well, that failed. They come back in 105 days, start his new campaign as a 3-year-old. His first race, kind of an even effort in a stakes, comes back and then runs in Keeneland. So that might have been the target. He just kind of went around the track. Looks like he was beaten 4 lengths, though, not disgraced. And he did improve OptixEQ number-wise. And then the Pennine Ridge, which is a very good race, solid field, Grade 2. The horse went up in class again, so 2 times up in class and up in number. Now, I understand he didn't win, but he improved. The Kent race, I just think it was a really soft turf course that day, and he was up close, and you can see the race shape was fast, very fast. It was, for that distance, it was nuclear. And so he couldn't hold on, so he kind of backed up. So the extended note here is the projection is shorter, and he got a bit trapped inside, leaving the turn, but he did not have the punch and deep stretch. And it's understandable because he was close to that pace. He might be shorter, and then it also says in the extended note, firmer ground, because it was really soft. And you could see, his firm ground races, he kind of was gradually improving, 83 to 81. Okay, but that was a stakes race. Then moved up. Well, then he had the layoff around 84 and improved. Then he went to a graded 3 stakes, improved his number, even though it was good, and then came back and ran and improved after it. I think he's going to improve off the 91, and that would make him at least viable underneath for a big price. He's 20-1 in the morning line. You could do a lot worse. He does not plot well, but you can kind of forgive his plot to some extent because of some of these excuses. He's not in the right races. His 2-year-old form is his 2-year-old form. So, horses aren't as, developed then. So there's upside to this horse Freedom Trial. I think he can really fit into the race at a nice price, at least underneath, and, not, possibly upset. It's kind of a long shot. The number 5 was in the number. Well, let me just go with the number 4. This is a horse that I don't know. Is he kind of turned the corner when he went to dirt? So I don't understand why he's back on turf here. So the jury's still out for me because he didn't run as well on turf. I mean, numbers wise, and So, and I just wasn't crazy about his race in Haskell. You know, maybe he gets played because this is Cox. He's 4-1 in the morning line. I don't want any part of 4-1 on this horse. The 5 Data Man is okay. Could be kind of an underneath horse. Kind of one of these improving horses. You can see that his optics figs are improving. So you can, you know, maybe not do too wrong with that. I just worried about the kind of the horses he's been running against is at this kind of level. You can see the last time he ran a grade 2 company, projected a drop. But he's a horse that you don't want to toss. He's improving. He's 15-1. His plot 2 looks a little weak. Again, it's a little bit have to do with his 2-year-old form. But this is a horse that's improving, so I would kind of upgrade him. And I just think I basically covered every horse in the race. Yeah, I did. So for me, this race is tricky. I could see backing the favorite, but if you want alternatives, I think the 6 Mondego, who's come out of the same race, maybe this horse, gets firmer ground, improves, maybe has a chance to upset. But there's some long shots. If you still want to consider the favorite, there's some long shots that I look at. I think one is Freedom Trail, especially for underneath. This horse, I think, is going to, I'm projecting this horse to improve. And the other horse is Data Man. I think that's another horse, just kind of a solid horse. And another horse that I don't think the plot really reflects his form. Both horses from a little bit off the pace. I think the pace dynamics hurts horses like the 10, the 9, and the 3. So for me, it's yeah, that's it. I mean, that's it. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put the plot and the notes up on Race of the Day with the video, so you can kind of analyze. It's not an easy race, but I think it's an interesting race. And again, when you're kind of handicapping these 3-year-old races, be wary because these horses are still developing. Just want to let the program note here on this weekend with the Silver Plan. I'm going to do kind of an expanded green report for people that like the green report. So you'll get that free if you buy the Silver Plan on the weekend on Saturday. So a lot of good racing, You got Kentucky Downs, you have Del Mar, you have Colonial. So a great day of racing. So look for that. And thanks for supporting us. Check us out on Twitter at OptixEQ and go to our website, OptixEQ.com, if you want more information. So thanks for listening.